how we can connect with spirits, one thing is very important for us to think about it, which is we are all spirits. So we are not necessarily talking about only discarnate spirits. We are talking about the incarnate one as well. Because as we will see, our lives here, our thoughts suffer a lot of impact depending on the lives and thoughts of others. We each time more understand how connected we are. Today, we understand and we see this connection because exactly of technology that allows us to, in real time, to be communicating with people on the other side of the world. So if on the material level we can do that, how can we not imagine that we can do that as well on a spiritual level? So it's very important for us to I changed the wrong one. To understand that our state of mind, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act is actually going to bring the same kind of energy around us. We all wanted to be happy and in peace and with peace of mind. But the thing is it actually that we are giving to the world? Because many times we blame the world, we blame others for every disturbance we have, but we do not realize that deep inside of us, we live in such a turmoil. We live it in such imbalance that we cannot actually capture the positive energy that is actually present in the world as well. We do not have only negative things, we have positive ones. But we should then imagine ourselves very much like an antenna. Okay, we can capture whatever radio wavelength will be sent to us. But I'm actually going to attune with those that I feel more comfortable with those that I have a certain level of affinity. So it's very much like a radio. When you have a radio, you are capable of hearing, I don't know how many stations, but you will choose a specific one that goes according to your mood. Well, when we are talking about a spiritual association, we are talking about the same thing. Depending on my spiritual mood, I will, without many times realize, attune with those minds that are somehow vibrating in the same level that I am. So this is why we see in many philosophies, this is not only in terms of spiritism, we have from the times of Socrates, know yourself, the importance of the know thyself. Why do I have to know myself? Just to know myself, just to tell people that I know who I am, or because by knowing myself, I can actually start assessing what kind of connections I make, what kind of associations I will bring into my life, what kind of things I am happy about me and I'm not happy about myself, and how can I work on that and change it. So we have that, the Spiritus Juana de Angelis, in all the psychological works that came through the hands of Divaldo Pereira Franco, also tells us about the importance of us being more aware of our thoughts, of our level of emotions. And so many others, Eastern philosophies, for instance, that they ask us to be mindful about our thoughts, about the energy that we can actually give to in the world. So the spirit André Luiz, being very sensitive to that and understanding how we can actually make connections with, sorry that there is something else here in the computer trying to interfere. Okay, cancel. Okay. Okay, wait. So the spirit André Luiz, knowing, being very sensitive about the changes that we need to do, about the connections we can make with the spirit realm and how they can impact in our day-to-day lives, he proposed it in a message that we can find in the book Peace and Renovation, as you can see here, Peace and Renovation, 10 ways for us to meditate about, to bring it to our existence, to try to prevent us for these connections with this negative spirit. So what would be the first one? Don't allow resentment or bitterness into your heart. It's amazing how we actually are capable of holding grudges. We blame people for the circumstances of our lives, and this is one thing that is in Spiritism is very hard, because we start learning that I have responsibility for my actions, for my thoughts, and therefore I can no longer blame others for what is happening to me. But it's still, whenever we can, in a way, we try to blame others for everything negative that happens to us. And not only that, but we keep that perhaps throughout many incarnations, not only one incarnation. Many times we have some kind of emotions, like we call the negative emotions, towards people that do not even remember that we exist. But of course, as human beings, we tend to be very self-centered. So the whole world, all the rest of the 8 billion people revolves around me. And of course I'm important. They are thinking and remembering me. But this is not true. How many people have passed it in your life and your lives, and you actually don't even remember them? So it's the same thing. And many times by keeping this resentment within ourselves, we are poisoning ourselves. We are affecting the energy, the vibration, the atmosphere that surrounds us. And as a consequence, we are going to be connecting with spirits. And remember that every time that I say spirit here, I'm actually implying both incarnate and discarnate. We have a saying that tell me who are your friends, who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. Because we tend to be surrounded by people that think like ourselves. So we cannot, in this sense, imagine that we are a very good person if I'm always walking among people that are not considered to be good. Somehow there is something wrong in myself as well. So if we could, little by little, start removing those negativity from us, we would benefit a lot from that. There are even very bad cases that we hold those resentments in relation to our parents. The relationship between a parent and a child should be, is always very important in our lives. And it's going to impact us, it's going to impact our formation and even future lives. So if we start remembering that we are all here because we are still imperfect spirits and we are in a process of evolvement, of bettering ourselves, we perhaps can be a little more tolerant and forgiving to our parents and to spirits that perhaps have caused us harm. So let us see what is the second advice that the Spirit André Luiz gives to us. Bless those that censure your path without criticism to anyone. It's hard, right? Because we don't like criticism. We don't like when people come to us and start saying things that, according to them, should help us in improving ourselves. normally people say that if you really want to hear the truth about something, you ask an enemy instead of a friend. Because a friend will always try to sugarcoat the situation, because a friend knows that, if perhaps the friend says exactly what she or he is thinking, is going to hurt you. But someone that doesn't care that much about you will tell you just the truth, or at least the truth, as perhaps people are seeing that. So in any case, it's always important for us, if we really are in this journey, in this mission, so to say, of knowing ourselves, of trying to better ourselves, of trying to have better energy around us, better connection, spiritual connection, this is a very important thing. We have to hear what others are saying. Let's say, for instance, that someone comes to you and say, I think you are a very jealous person or possessive. Of course, our first reaction is always to say, no, I'm not, right? But then, a few days pass by, another person comes to you, oh my God, you are so possessive, you are so jealous. Then, it keeps on happening like that. What is happening here? There is only two alternatives. Either you actually are possessive and jealous and people are noticing that and are telling you that, or in case you're not, this is the image that you are giving the world of yourself. Because there is always this possibility. Some people that, they wear a mask even with negative things, and this is how the world perceives them. So if that is the case, you have to actually pay attention and start working in yourself to remove that, because it's a negative personality trait. And if you are actually very possessive in something, it's time for us to learn to detach a little bit from things. So in any case, when we have people that bring those comments to us, instead of us being hurt in our pride and try to discard the comment, let us, stop for a minute and try to see how this can work in our benefit. Because even, enemies, they can be the voice of God to you. Because like we said, friends sometimes will resist the impulse of telling you the truth. So let's see the third one. Never force any person to share your point of view. I think this image here is perfect, right? We have some notions of life, of ourselves, of people, that we want others to have the same thing as we do. So we start being that troubled person that always try to convince others, to brainwash others, and especially when we are talking here about spiritism. Spiritism is my passion, actually. And I'm very grateful that it has been part of my life forever in this incarnation. But see, I understand that this is good for me. It's something that works for me in my level of involvement, in my interest, in according to the understanding that I already have. But perhaps it's not going to be the same for others. And then you see people that try to convince others to know this is the best thing, you have to come. I mean, for everything, like when you start doing Pilates class, for instance, and then there is that fever that everyone wants to do that. Oh, it's wonderful, until the next fashion comes in. So there are things that maybe it's in our field of interest and not that of others, in how I can perceive the world. And others cannot perceive the world in the same way. For instance, there are many people that criticize people that leave jail with a certain very dogmatic religion. We have to remember that when they were imprisoned in the first time, it was because of a certain crime. Okay, regardless of how serious this crime was, the person to go to prison has have committed a certain crime. Probably couldn't care less about the world and even about themselves. And now they go to prison and they meet God. Maybe not in the way that we understand God, that we worship God, that we spread the knowledge about God, but they meet that in a different circumstances, in a more dogmatic circumstance. And there we go, they are criticizing. What is better, that this person gets back to the life of criminality, not believing in anything, or just transform themselves so much because they somehow got to know something that is greater than themselves and is going to help them to keep in the righteousness path. So we have to be very careful and not be judgmental in relation to others' choice. So, the fourth one, get accustomed to wait for the achievement of your ideals, working and improving yourself for the good of all. So we sometimes can feel very disappointed when we embrace a certain thing, a certain cause, for instance, and we do not see the result of that overnight. We are very impatient people, right? As a rule, we are very impatient. And so this can make us lose interest in that ideal, lose hope, for instance. But what the spirits are telling us here is that, there is, actually there is one saying in English that I love it, and I think it gives us the idea of what this phrase wants to tell us. No pain, no gain. Everything that we have to do in life require commitment, hours, sacrifice in a certain way, resignation, patience. It requires a lot of things. So if we, let's say, especially now that we are trying here, we are all working in terms of succeeding in having better thoughts, in bettering ourselves. We have been bad for millennia. Like the Spirit Emmanuel tells us, when people, because very often when something bad happens to us in the life of us spiritists, we kind of have a conversation with God saying, God, come on. I've been a good girl, right? I go to the Spiritist Center. I translate books. I do this and that. And then the Spirit Emmanuel, in that very particular way that he has, he says, well, you've been good for 5 minutes. So, do the math. And because we've been good for 5 minutes, we think that we should be receiving all the blessings and gifts from the world. So we have to understand that this has to be a constant. It is also part of them knowing how much we are actually serious and involved about this whole transformation. So if we just give up, then again we are going to lower our energy, our vibrations, our thoughts, and we'll be much more susceptible to receive the influence of negative spirits. Abstain from overloading your problems with the needless burden of anxiety. That's, I don't know for you, but to me it's a tough one. They say that when you have anxiety, it's because you live in the future, not in the present. You live in the future, not in the present, because something that is making you anxious, if it's going to happen or not, for good or for bad, it's something that is still it lives in the future and doesn't live in the present. So we all, I think, here have heard about The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and the spirits have been telling us that in terms of, us being capable of being patient, of quieting ourselves, of being capable of embracing and learn all the lessons that life will bring to us. Divaldo Pereira Franco, that I imagine all of you know here, once one of his talks, he gave an example. He told a story about a lady that came to talk to him once. very distressed, very anxious, very nervous, and saying, Divaldo, you have to find time to talk to me. I need to talk to you. And of course, Divaldo, after doing what he had to do, found time to talk to this lady. And then he comes to her very worried about seeing how the lady was presenting herself. And then he asked her, what is happening to you? So, you seem very distressed. And she said, nothing is happening to me. Everything in my life is wonderful. I have no problems with my husband, with my children, with my health, with money, nothing. And Divaldo was looking at her, waiting, what would be the motive for her to be in that situation. And then it was when she started saying, but we learn in Spiritism that, you have to pay for your debts, about karma and all that. So I'm sure tomorrow something bad is going to happen to me. So I'm anxious, I'm nervous already, because if everything is so good today, tomorrow has to bring something bad. And then Divaldo said that he looked at her and said, oh, well, my friend, my advice to you is be happy today and be miserable tomorrow. So I thought that was genius, the way that he said that to her, and how it makes us feel how encouraged it is for us to have this level of worry. And believe me, I even in our Spiritist Center, I also received one case of a person that had tremendous guilty feelings because her life was just perfect. And somehow she thought that she didn't deserve that kind of life. And I said, well, do you think that God makes mistakes? That things that are happening to you, good or bad, it was by chance? So we have to think about that. And things that we will have to go through, to endure, they will come. And then when they come, when it rains, we open the umbrella. Until then, we just keep on thinking that it's not going to rain, and that perhaps if we act in goodness, we will not be seeing that many problems in our lives. So 6, cease all complaints or try to lessen them to a bare minimum. So let's look at here, right? The complaint session, the gratitude session, right? For those who work in Spiritist Center, I think this is very familiar. When people have lots of troubles in their lives, the center is like this package. Then things get better. They have better things to do with their time. And then things get bad again, they come back. So this is telling us something, okay? Don't go, because if you don't go, perhaps things are not going to get that bad. But the thing is, we have to count our blessings. A person that is always complaining, that is always focusing on the negative that is happening to him or her, is actually attracting this kind of spirits, this kind of thoughts to you, pessimistic people. Because, when you are in a circle of friends and you are the friend that is always complaining, oh, how is life with you? Oh, it's bad. You don't know what happened with me. It comes to a point that people cannot withstand you anymore. And then those that are going to feel comfortable with you are the ones that also have a way of only seeing the negative in life, the bad things in life. And so they bring that energy with them. And also we attract the spirits that will be happy with the level of sadness, discontentment that we will present in ourselves. And then it aggravates, because the thing is, when we bring people, spirits, incarnate or discarnate, in a wavelength of negativity, the potential of this sadness, negativity, is going to double, to triple, according to how long we maintain this dynamic. And so that's the reason why when proposing these 10 simple steps, simple in terms of us understanding, perhaps not so simple in terms of us practicing, putting them in practice in our daily lives. Andrea Luiz points out, focus on what you have of good. Sometimes, we have a problem in our profession. But your family life is good, your health is good, you have a house, you have a bed to go to sleep at night, you still have food in the fridge, if you have children, they are okay. I'm not going to say that they are wonderful, because sometimes it's hard for us to have wonderful children. We were not wonderful ourselves. So there are so many good things happening to you, but you just focus on your profession. That small black dot that we see, and we don't see all the white that is next to us. And so, again, every time I think negative, I will bring to me negativity. So following that, we should also remember how to praise, but it says here with sincerity, the merit of others. It's very hard sometimes for us to do that, because we are selfish, like we say, as a rule, we self-centered. We think that we are the only ones that deserve good things to happen to us. So when it happens to a friend, to a neighbor, we start feeling jealous, envious of the person. And we should understand that, again, nothing happens by chance. If that person received something that is good, a promotion, got himself or herself a good partner or a good child, I think we should take a different approach. I remember that I mean, it was hard in a way to have all this knowledge and understanding of spiritism since an early age, because many times I felt like I didn't belong, because people in general that I would meet or my colleagues at school, they didn't have the same understanding that I did, and it brought some confusion. And I mean, not that I thought that I had to change, but very early in life I learned that I had to somehow, keep my thoughts and my ideas to myself. For those perhaps we are that are not familiar, but 30 something years ago in Brazil, for you to be a spiritist was not a good thing. People didn't know what a spiritism was, and I mean, there was a lot of misunderstanding, and so that was very hard. But I remember that when having to face things like that, I would be that person that if I saw something good happening to others, instead of feeling envy, I would feel, oh my God, how great, because if something good is happening to her, it's because it can happen to me as well. So that was always my way of thinking, but then I start realizing that the world and the people that I surrounded me as a rule was not thinking exactly in the same terms. They were thinking this promotion should be mine, this praise from the teacher should be mine. But as a spiritist and continuing this path and trying for us to get better in this path, we have to learn and to understand that. So if good things are happening to others, it's because they can happen to you as well. I mean, it's not by chance. I mean, if we have marriage, if those things are going to work in our favor, then, I mean, we should feel happy for the people that already have them, and actually to be able to show this appreciation. We tend to think sometimes that we are the only ones that have problems in life. That bad things or suffering only happen to you. We look at how another person looks like, and we start judging, oh, this one may have a very easy life. We don't know what is happening with that person. And for sure, understanding that we live still in a world of trials and atonements, we know that everyone, without exception, are going through difficult ordeals. Some more difficult than others, but everyone is going through difficult ordeals. Many times, much more than the good moments that we can have and share with others. So to be able to receive a pat in the back, a praise for the work, for a job well done, for a promotion well deserved, for something good that happened to you. It's a way of us showing that we have more sympathy, we have more connection with our brothers and sisters, because we understand they go through hard things, and when they go through something that deserves a praise or a pat in the back, we are also acknowledging that and sharing with them their happiness. So this is a way of us, we start vibrating in a way of, of compassion, of brotherhood. And as a result, we will be bringing those, energies of compassion and brotherhood to us as well. So conserve optimism and the detachment of possession. Like we were saying, one thing that sometimes can make people move away from spiritism is the misunderstanding of believing that we are here on earth to suffer, and that I have to pay off my debts from the past, things that I do not even remember that I did. That is almost like it's not my responsibility. And so we don't like that, of course. I mean, who likes to be paying debts, right? But the thing is, we miss the point. We are not here to suffer or to pay debts. We are here to learn lessons. So I may choose the way that I'm going to learn this lesson. It can be through the mistakes of others, because I'm observing and seeing what is the consequence of doing something that led others to reap a negative consequence. Or it can be through my voluntary desire to grow and to work in terms of goodness. That phrase, that statement from Jesus, love covers a multitude of sins, is very important. Many times we tend to analyze the words of Jesus just from a religious, even dogmatic aspect, but we do not understand what is behind that, because the word sin immediately associate with a certain religion or something, but it means wrongdoings, right? So I can make amends from wrongdoings with attitudes of love, of charity, of compassion, of giving. So I don't need to learn through, suffering. Yesterday I was talking to someone, actually an American, that went to our talk, and she was actually asking something in relation to that. And I said, let's say that I keep on poking you, right? Like that. I mean, when I poke you, I don't feel what you're feeling. And I mean, it hurts, right? It can hurt you, it disturb you, it's unnerving, right? But to me, it's nothing. I'm just doing that. So am I going to learn that this is not nice when she's telling me, Jussara, you poking me hurt me, and I mean, it's disturbing in so many ways. Or I will be in need of someone doing the same to me, so I'm going to learn that. Most of the times we choose the second option. I mean, when I'm hurting you, it doesn't hurt me. How are you saying to me that it hurts? So do you understand this dynamic? Even when we think about God being a punishing God, It's not punishing us. It's telling you, listen, I've been trying to tell you so many times that this kind of attitude that you don't feel nothing in yourself, it's so hurtful and hurting for others. Now, I'm tired of just saying you have to go through this experience yourself to learn not to do it anymore. So this is the difference in learning through pain or through love. So here, when there is no reason for us to be thinking, oh, I live in a world of trials and atonements, I have to suffer, happiness is not of this world. And then we go from A to Z like this woman, I'm sure bad times are still to come because everything is so good. No, we have it because I'm building my tomorrow today. And I'm attracting people in terms of, thoughts to motivate me to go through one way or another with my behavior, with my thoughts. The detachment of possession, in the sense, is more like when they say you should own your possessions and not be owned by them. So we're not saying here that you have to give up all your your riches, everything that you possess, and just be a burden to society. What we are saying is, remember that at the end of the day, at the end of life as a physical, in its physical perspective, you are not going to take anything with you except what you can bring with yours in your spirit. So own things, but do not be owned by them. Do not believe that only things that you can own are actually of a great value in life, because we know that there is the spiritual life that we have to think about. Number 9, never feel incapable of studying and learning regardless of the circumstances. We know that an idle mind is always much more prone to think foolishness, right? And so again, if I do not have control of my mind, if I'm wasting my time too much doing nothing or thinking about negative things, I will be perhaps capturing energy of thoughts that should not be with me. So an occupied mind in something useful will always be of great advantage to us. We all know, studies have shown that learning another language in a more advanced age, for instance, can be a very good prevention for Alzheimer, for instance. So if you do not need to work, do not need to do anything else with your time, perhaps, go learn a new language. It's going to be something useful for you to do, using your brain and avoiding that idleness that is always the invitation for, temptations, negative thoughts. Divaldo also talks about the story of a lady that he met, that I think she was in her 80s, when she decided to go to college and take a course on psychology. As you can imagine, until she had her degree, she would be like 86, 87, 88. And in a very, subtle way, Divaldo was talking to her, saying, well, but you do realize that perhaps you will not have the chance of working in your new profession, right? You are going to college, but perhaps with the age. And she said, no problem, because I will take that with me for the afterlife. Next time I come, I already will bring a notion of this extra knowledge that I got here. So you see how the mind of a spiritist should think. It's not, well, at this point in life, what is, what am I going to do with that? Or learning a new language, a new profession, or, a new skill, for instance. But it can be very useful. First of all, you don't know if it can be useful right now, but it's always, this kind of knowledge will always be with you. And again, it will keep you connected in something that is productive, in minds that, like yourself, also want to enlighten themselves instead of just keeping in their idleness and, as a consequence, many times with negative thoughts. And the last one that we have is stop thinking about yourself to serve others. The prayer from St. Francis of Assisi already tells us that, right? It is by giving that we receive. It's still because we are very immature. When we think about ourselves, like, in terms of eternity, that we are, I tend to say that perhaps we are entering in our teenager years as a spirit, but I cannot tell for sure. Okay, but let's say that we use what we have in life here, being a child, the terrible twos, and then going through to pre-teen until teen and more mature. We see that the characteristic of a child is that of a very selfish person. We always want things for us. Our parents have to have their whole attention to us, to serve my needs, because I'm still incapable of doing something for myself and much less for others. As spirits, how are we positioning ourselves? Are we still positioning ourselves that we just want, all the merits, all the blessings, all the attention for us, or are we already thinking that it's by giving that we receive? And are you already understanding that every time a mother suffers the loss of a child in the other side of the world, that sadness, hole that happened in the life of this mother is going to impact all of us? So this is what we learn. We are much more connected than we think. I remember in one of the books from André Luiz, I don't remember if it was the Nosso Lar or Messengers, that he says, Earth is not blue. It's not blue. Because from the physical, material perspective, planet Earth seems to be so beautiful. But when he describes scenes, what surrounds Earth in terms of thoughts and feelings and actions, it's not blue. And so we are all surrounded by that kind of energy. And that's why, it is so important that each one of us is start working on our transformation, because, it's those little points of light that are actually penetrate this darkness that happen around us, and perhaps bring each time more optimism in the rest of the world. Because so far it's very easy for us to be submerged in negativity. And unfortunately the media doesn't help us that much by only or mainly advertising the negative things that happen in the world. I learned from a person, actually he received the Nobel Prize of Peace from Spain, because they also have one that, but he deserved the other one as well. He's an American that is called Bill Drake, a pioneer in the work of change makers in this country. That when I made this comment to him, he said, Jussara, average people learn that they will get caught when they do something bad, when the media always advertise those things happening and they being in prison and all of that. But in a way, I think we should have as well much more advertisement in terms of the good things that happen in the world, also to motivate us to continue in this path. And we learn from Spiritism that charity is actually, there is no salvation without charity. Again, not with the image that God will come here and will rescue us because you are a charitable soul, but because I'm transforming myself. I can only love others. I can only feel compassion, tolerance towards others if I already have a certain level of spiritual understanding that has contributed to my spiritual evolvement. Until I just think about myself, until I just think that, it's 5 minutes that I've been good, but then give me 5 minutes of goodness in return, then I'm still not living that in terms of love, growing, and serve. So just to wrap up what we were talking here, the idea was not to talk to us about the presence of obsessors that we learn so much in the Spiritism. Even because obsessors do not only exist in the other side of life, they exist sometimes under the same roof as we do. When you see, for instance, relationships that one is completely dominated by the other and cannot rid themselves of that kind of sick relationship. What is that if not obsession? So the idea was not just to present that even from the material or the spiritual perspective, but to make us reflect about how much we ourselves are actually responsible for what happens to us in the physical aspect and in the spiritual aspect. So I want good things, I want good thoughts, I want to have good behavior, but I need to send that to the world as well. Because if I'm not sending that, if I'm not attuning with this kind of forces and thoughts and actions, I'm not going to be able to do it. Because, like we said, there are many thoughts, many things, and even ourselves, our past, that pose us to this negative emotion, to this selfish and pride, and all the things that can keep us stuck. And we understand with this blessed knowledge that we receive from Spiritism that there are so many good spirits surrounding us, that we can have this direct connection with benefactors that can assist us in each and every point of our lives, even if when they cannot remove the difficulties we have to face because they are part of our growth. It's like, when a child comes to you and doesn't want to go to school, what do you say as a responsible father or mother? You have to go to school. It's good for you, right? So God, in his understanding of life, also knows that some things that we do not consider to be vacation or good is actually very good for us and necessary. But they do not let us alone in this journey. It's very much like the message, the footprints on the sand, that when the person thought that it was walking alone in the most difficult period of his life, and before he could see two sets of print in the sand, he thought that he was alone. And the message tells us that Jesus was actually carrying him. So it happens the same thing with us. We just need to make the connection. Help yourselves and heavens will help you. So whenever we need assistance, whenever we need to feel ourselves surrounded, and many times we cannot avoid going to places that we know are places that can somehow perturb us. But then you pray, you ask for assistance when you enter the place, when you leave the place, and somehow you can actually feel protected. So our happiness depends on us, depend on our thoughts, depend on our connections, and it's our responsibility. It's not something that we like to hear. It's so much better when I can just blame others or say, you do it for me. We cannot do that for others. We can only do that for ourselves. So I really hope that with this thought, this reflection, we can actually start thinking more about changing the tone of our thoughts, our minds, and also and especially our actions. Because this is actually which is going to guarantee to us a better spiritual environment, better connections with the good spirits, the benefactors that are surrounding us all the time, for us to not to get into the errors of the past. We are very, very blessed because we understand that we do not have to go in this path alone. Not only we have all the benefactors, our guardian angel next to us, but we have places, oases, true oases of peace and enlightenment and knowledge that can help us nurture this new being in ourselves that has to come forward and has to start living in a new era, the era of the Spirit. So we have all of you, we have all these people that think already like ourselves, and we have places and house and the good spirits to help us. So I hope you all have a very good night and a good, a lot of food for thought, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.